up in a church that left me with a bad taste in my mouth for church. Because we just go to church and it was something you did because you had to do it. I don't know if I ever heard the gospel clearly presented. I never saw a person come to Christ. I don't know if I ever saw a life changed because of it. It was just plain boring, and out of that, and much of what we do here is in reaction to that. Because to be honest with you, I just plain don't have the time or the interest to be involved in just doing church. And that didn't make any sense then. It doesn't make any sense now. I want to be a part of a place where God is moving in powerful ways. I want to be in a place where God is invited to work, and He is, in fact, working. When I came to Christ, I started reading the Bible, and I started reading in the book of Acts, and I read about the church. I went to the pastor, and I said to him, I'm reading about the church. I love this. It's exciting. And I look at what we're doing, and it's the opposite of that. And he said to me, Woody, you can't expect the church to be like it was then. As close to prophetic as I ever got, this is what I said. If I can't be a part of a church like the one I read about in Acts, I don't see the point. I want to be out there on the edge where God is moving. I want to be in a place where God is invited to work, and He is, in fact, working.
Well, good morning. How's everybody doing? All right, welcome to Blue Ridge. We're so glad to see you this morning. Let's go ahead and stand. We are going to sing together as an act of worship this morning. There is no shadow that has ever overcome your light, and there is no rival that could ever stand against your might. You've always been with us. Every battle you've already won. We've already won. There is no weapon that has ever left a mark on you, and there is no army with the power to conquer truth. You've always been with us. Every battle you've already won. We've already won. Show me one thing He can't do. Show me a mountain He can't move. He's the God of the breakthrough, and anything is possible. Show me one thing that's too hard. Show me waters You can't part. He's the God of the breakthrough, and anything is possible. It's possible. There is a kingdom that's advancing at the speed of light, and in His kingdom off despair as I sing out your name. A victory dance I will dance out in faith. I will crush disappointment and break every chain. Now all of my fear I will turn into praise. Shake off despair as I sing out your name. A victory dance I will dance out in faith. I will crush disappointment and break every chain. Now all of my fear I will turn into praise. Shake off despair as I sing out your name. A victory dance I will dance out in faith. I will crush disappointment. Show me one thing you can't do. Show me a mountain you can't move. He's the God of the breakthrough. With anything is possible. Show me one thing that's too hard. Show me waters he can't part. He's the God of the breakthrough. And anything is possible. It's possible.
You make it easy to love you. You are good and you are kind. You bring joy into my life. You make it easy to trust you. You have never left my side. You've been faithful every time. All I want is you, Jesus. All I want is you. You are the refuge I run to. You are the fire that leads me through the night. I'll follow you anywhere. There's a million reasons to trust you, and nothing to fear, for you are by my side. I'll follow you anywhere. Oh, Jesus, you came to my rescue, took my place upon that cross. You redeemed what I had lost. Now my whole world revolving around you. You're the center of my life. You're the treasure, you're the prize. Oh, all I want is you, Jesus. All I want is you. You are the refuge I run to. You are the fire that leads me through the night. I'll follow you anywhere. There's a million reasons to trust you, nothing to fear, for you are by my side. I'll follow you anywhere. I'll follow you anywhere. Oh, I'll follow you anywhere. Oh, follow you anywhere. You lead me, whatever it costs me. Oh, all I want is you, Jesus. All I want is you. Wherever you lead me, whatever it costs me. Oh, all I want is you, Jesus. All I want is you. Wherever you lead me, whatever it costs me. Oh, all I want may that be the prayer of our hearts today as we have gathered together in your name, that you would meet us here, that we would listen for your voice, and that we would obey and we would follow you. We just want to say this morning that we love you and we're so grateful that you have allowed us, you've opened our eyes to see you and to be able to worship you. So we just want to give you all the praise, and we ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you all can have a seat.
And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Even on the male and female servants, in those days, I will pour out my spirit.
Well, welcome to Blue Ridge Community Church. My name is Jeremy. I'd like to welcome our Bedford campus, those that are streaming this online, watching this in maybe in Appomattox or in your home right now. And those of you at New London, we are glad that you are here with us this morning. Guys, a couple weeks ago, I told you that my family and I, we just got back from basically a month out on the road out west. We were traveling, we were camping, and I told you a little bit about that. And for me, this was the longest vacation I had ever taken. And so as you can imagine, while I didn't know exactly what to expect when I came back, like I didn't know what to expect when I got back into the office, the mountain of emails and voicemails or text messages I need to respond to. I knew at some level, I mean, it wouldn't surprise any of us after being gone for a month that there would be, a fairly large amount of work, but I really didn't know what to expect exactly. And so when we got back in the office, obviously some of that stuff was there. Obviously there was a lot of stuff to do. But the thing that surprised me, the thing that in fact encouraged and excited me was the variety and the sheer amount of stories that God kind of just bombarded me with of the way in which he was moving in and through this community of faith. I came back and I just wasn't expecting to hear all the stuff I was hearing. Like, for example, Dave Kuntz, one of the teachers here, he's not on staff, but he teaches every now and then on a Sunday and parks on the parking team out there. But he a longtime believer, he called me up Tuesday night after we got back in, and he said, Jeremy, I don't know if you know this, but Agape Center is having their first baptism. Now, for those of you that don't remember what the Agape Center is, it's Agape Center in Lynchburg. It's a group that was birthed out of a dream that Tabitha North, a longtime Blue Ridger, had of serving some of the most underserved in our community through the giving of their time and their resources of showing God's love. And so Dave was letting me know that they were having a baptism. And so that Friday morning, I got to show up to this baptism that was happening outside of their building. And the thing is, you'll see in these photos that was so encouraging was there were 4 women that were baptized. But the thing that was so exciting to me was 2 of them were their clients, people that they serve, and 2 of them were people that were volunteering and serving. And God was working in both groups, in drawing people towards him. But that wasn't the only story. So Tuesday night, Dave called me. Wednesday morning, I get a text message from Steve Foster, one of our elders here, and it was actually a group text message to the elders, and he sent this photo in the text message. And this is a group of kids, 20 or so kids in a trailer park in Roanoke, Virginia. This is primarily Spanish-speaking trailer park there, and God is using a group that's been regularly going there, that's now opened up this door into this trailer park in Roanoke. People like Carlos and Beatrice who attend our Bedford campus. and who grew up in Colombia. And so obviously their their native tongue, their native language is Spanish. And he's using them now in this trailer park, not to this group of people that would have never shown up here because of language barriers, because of distance barriers, to take the church to them. So that these kids and these families get to hear the gospel in a context that's relatable to them where they're at. It wasn't just then, so that was Wednesday morning. Wednesday night, I'm sitting in a group that I'm kind of leading, and we're praying for these dreams and visions we've been talking about, that God would do something. And so we had this guy, his name was Stan. He went to Blue Ridge for multiple years, and then God, a handful of years, moved him to Georgia, to Clarkston County, or Clarkston City, something like that. I can't remember if it's a town or a county, but the thing that's unique about Clarkston, it's got the single most diverse square mile in all of the United States. It's this place where God's bringing all sorts of immigrants from all over the world to this square mile. I mean, you got people from the Middle East, you got people from Central and South America, you got people from Africa, you got hundreds of nationalities represented in this single square mile. And God has been using him with this dream and the vision he has to go and reach people in the context there. They have stories of Muslims coming to Christ since God has been birthing this thing inside him. And I got to hear his story that Wednesday night. I got to hear in our BR team meeting that we have, I got to hear BR kids talk about the fact that they've been praying for months now that God would send people to serve, that basically since we've opened back up, they've been working off a skeleton crew. And it's not that they're out of the weeds yet and they don't need more people to serve, but what they said is over the last couple of weeks during the summer, which is unprecedented for us as a church, that over a dozen people have signed up just through praying. Just a dozen people have signed up to serve and be our kids. I got to hear a story of this last Tuesday night as a group of women from Blue Ridge, through stuff that God was prompting in them, to go and have a baby shower at the Blue Ridge Pregnancy Center for women that organization has been serving. Women who are choosing to walk the scary path of keeping their children, and what that means to go and love on them in this season of chaos. And it's not just, it's even in our physical buildings, I'm hearing this story, or from our physical buildings, I'm hearing our story. You guys know that a couple years ago, for our Bedford campus, we purchased the Westgate Shopping Center in Bedford. And it's an old 40-year-old shopping center. And so we went through renovating it. Well, about the unique thing about this, and I won't get into all the details here, but unique thing about this, we've shared this in the past, that of the 140,000 square feet of the shopping center, 25,000 right in the middle was, we bought everything in the shopping center except this 25,000 square feet right in the center, because it was owned by a different family local in Bedford. Well, when we were purchasing the shopping center, they approached us because they were ready to be done with it. And so they approached us about buying that 25,000 square feet in the middle, and it wasn't the right time. They wanted like $350,000 for it, which was a fair price, but just not where we were. We didn't want to invest that kind of money. We had plenty of places to put people, or to put the Bedford campus, and so we were good with passing. Well, as you guys know, we've shared this story. Just this last year, God provided a way, and we ended up buying that 25,000 square feet of commercial real estate for $88,000 in there. But here's where God's continued to tell the story. So we knew when we were retrofitting that space, the Bedford space, God made us aware of these. We created this LLC that purchases, long story, but God made us aware that there were some state grants because of the way Bedford is zoned, that to encourage businesses to bring money and jobs into the town of Bedford. They offer grants after the fact, after you do certain things, after you invest a certain amount of money into commercial real estate or something like that, you can go back and you can apply for grants. And so we learned about this at the beginning of 2021. We started the application process, and we could have gotten up to like $100,000. And so while I was gone on vacation, we ended up getting approved for some of this grant money. And while I was gone, it was actually deposited in our account. Guess how much it was for? $88,000. Like, seriously, I know. I told Jana, my wife, I said, it probably would have been less impressive if we would have gotten the whole $100,000 because God was being so specific in that here it is, I'm showing you guys, as scary as these steps are, as much as it's changing, as much as something this last several years has felt so unsettling on so many different ways, I am with you. I am walking this out and I am drawing people in new ways. And so coming back and hearing this, I was encouraged, excited. That's just some of the stories that I've heard over the last several weeks. And I was super encouraged because of, guys, what we've been talking about. You guys are familiar with it. We've been saying, guys, we believe God is taking us to a new place as a church. And we believe that as we're going to this new place, it's not because what we did before was bad or incorrect. Guys, I stand up here as someone whose life has been changed and transformed by my time here at Blue Ridge. I know many of us listening in Bedford or online or here at the New London campus, we could say the same thing, that God has affected our lives, that our families are different, our friends' lives are different because of what he's done over the last several decades here at Blue Ridge. And that's amazing, but here's what we also know. Guys, our world is significantly different than it was 20, 25 years ago. We know that. It's so different, and this whole model of this one size fits all kind of approach, it's not gonna work sending us into our future. If we're gonna continue to make disciples, if we're gonna continue to reach new people with the gospel, if we're gonna reach people like us or reach people completely different than us, we gotta think and dream in new ways and ask God to invite us into new things that he wants to do. And so we've been sharing this passage. You heard the passage in the bumper. It's not gonna be familiar or new for some of you who have been attending for quite a while. It says, in the last days, as Peter's quoting Joel, as he's giving the talk that would launch the New Testament church, Peter's standing up. It says, in the last days, God says, speaking of this day, speaking of the day in which Peter was standing right there, he said, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. You see, we believe the future is going to be discovered together as God is birthing dreams and visions and renewing passions and callings inside of us as a church. And it's not just gonna be as Woody and Jeremy or any teacher stands up here and says, hey guys, this is what we're doing. It's gonna be as we listen for God's spirit together, as he empowers us, as he births new things, and we go out and we live on mission. We're gonna watch the various ways in which God begins to move his church. In this last several weeks of hearing these stories, I'm seeing the early pictures of what God is beginning to do, and it's exciting. It's encouraging. It doesn't mean it's not without fear or scary, but it has been so encouraging to me. And so today, what we wanna do is, like you guys have seen over the last several months, we're purposely not moving into our next series yet because we want today to tell more stories. Stories of God's movement, stories of people that God is birthing things in. You'll remember back when we showed the Tampa Underground and we said, guys, we're not saying that's the type of church that we're becoming. We're just saying this is a picture of a church doing it differently. What does God want to teach to us? Then we introduced a couple months ago as we did the first dreams and visions talk. We showed you the Surrender Grounds Community Church. That's a new church plant that's birthed out of a group of people here at Blue Ridge who live in the Appomattox community, who wanted to reach their friends and family, who wanted to not just say, you know what, we may travel the 30, 45 minutes here, but our friends and family, our neighbors, they'll never travel this far. Most likely, most of them won't. And so we introduced it. God was birthing this dream in them, but even there we're not saying that it's gonna be classic church plants that we think God is calling everyone to do. This was just their dream and vision that God was birthing inside of them. Or about a month ago, this last June, while I was out of town, Andrew and Steve stood up here and showed you guys Isaiah 117 house and the Anxious for Nothing ministry, people that God was birthing these dreams and visions of these nonprofits to reach some of the most vulnerable, most underserved in our surrounding communities. But even with that, it was just saying this is a picture of what God is doing in them, so that we could celebrate together with them, so that we could pray together with them, so some of us might be able to hold their arms up, but saying, guys, that's not the only thing that God may be calling you to. That's not the thing that necessarily we're saying he might be doing in you. And today we want to share 3 more stories. And what you're gonna see is these are 3 different than any of the others we've shown. And here's what we wanna do. We wanna do 3 things today, 3 things. 1, we wanna celebrate. We do. We want to be the type of people that celebrate the work of God. Applaud what God is doing as he's bringing his kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven through awakening of these dreams and visions inside of people. The second thing we want to do is I hope you see the variety. That we would be able to take God out of a box and stop seeing it's like, okay, maybe that's just for the religious professionals, or that's just for the missionary, or but no, this is for us as a church together to discover what he has for us. And thirdly, that we would be willing to ask the question, God, what's the one thing you have for me today? Like, what's the one thing in one of these stories that you want me to hear that's gonna help me take that next step in helping someone else walk out their relationship with Jesus, helping someone else take a next step in their discipleship journey, help someone else take their next step in what it means to follow Jesus in their own life. What's the one thing you want to share? What's the one thing you want to speak to me? I believe if we're willing, God is speaking. And we want to be a part of more and more cheering one another on to follow Jesus into the dreams and the visions that he's inviting us to follow him into. So before I invite the first story to come on up, Talita and Sarah, would you guys go ahead and pray with me? Jesus, thank you so much for the story that you're telling. Thank you so much for the things that you're inviting us into. Thank you so much. I really wasn't expecting to be bombarded with all the different ways, and I could have kept on going, we just don't have time. The different ways in which we're watching you move in people, in and outside of this building, in and outside of our Bedford campus, in and outside of Surrender Grounds, in and outside of our communities here in surrounding areas. Jesus, thank you so much that you invite us through faith to walk with you into scary places, but places that if we're willing to step, you'll show up and you'll blow us away with what you're gonna do. And so I pray for this morning, I pray for those that are gonna be speaking live and the video, that one, you would calm nerves and that we would be able to celebrate and we would be able to hear what it is that you might have for us. In fact, right now, if you'd like God to speak to you, and don't just do it because of anything else, would you just open up your hands as a sign and say, God, I would love to hear something from you this morning, specifically for me. Would you just take a moment, open up your hands, and invite Jesus to speak to you? It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. Talita. Sarah?
Hello, I'm Talita, and I'm originally from Brazil, and I've been with Blue Ridge since 2012.
And I'm Sarah LaFrance. I was born and raised in Virginia, and I've been attending Blue Ridge since May 2020. And this is our story of how the Glory Girls got started.
Everything started last December when my oldest daughter attended Blue Ridge Youth Group. And the event she attended, due to COVID restrictions, made her feel disconnected from her friends because of the distancing and the mask mandate. My immediate reaction was, I need to do something. The vision wasn't there yet, just a feeling that I need to act in a way to help my daughter grow closer to God and not allow this bad experience to define her relationship towards him.
In January, our families vacationed together to celebrate Talita and Tim's anniversary. Talita shared with me what happened to her daughter, and I knew that God was leading me to do something. During our trip, we drove by a very poor village where the children looked so hopeless, and we thought maybe God wants us to do something here, overseas. But as we started praying for guidance, God says, they're in your home, they're in your neighborhood, they're all around you. Talita and I both work, and our schedules can be very unpredictable, so time was a big issue. Our kids involved in sports, and that was just challenging to find a free night to serve in any way.
In April, Pastor Jeremy showed the micro-church video. That Sunday, I realized that the right time wasn't just going to happen if I didn't make time for it. Right after the service, we decided to start a small group that same week. We challenged our daughters to invite girls from their class that would be interested in participating on a Bible study. Our girls invited their friends from Forest Middle School. Majority of them had never been to my house before, and due to COVID, we weren't sure how the parents would respond to this invitation. God brought more people than we expected. On our first week, there were 18 girls. We played games, we shared a meal, and used a book called The Glory Girls as a study guide. The girls shared and asked questions, and afterwards, we prayed for one another. The first night, all the girls were excited, especially my daughters, for hosting this event at our house. During our second meeting, I felt led to share the plan of salvation with them, not assuming that every girl there knew how to accept Jesus in their hearts. That night, one of the girls gave her life to Christ. I was not expecting anyone to accept Jesus that night. I was just planting a seed, but God does the unexpected, and I'm so grateful for that. As we got to know them better, we saw how each girl came from a different belief system. We had Catholic, atheist, and Christian girls, but one thing they all had in common was that they were all open to learn more about Jesus. One thing that stands out during the study was the book was the story of Moses. In the book, it teaches the girls on how to hear God's voice. Just as Moses felt incapable and unequipped to be used by God, the same way Sarah and I felt right before we committed ourselves to this new group.
Over the next 8 weeks, parents offered to buy dinner for the group. Several families started attending Blue Ridge. We saw the girls' enthusiasm grow and their excitement to come back each week. The community was built and more girls started showing up. By the end of the study, we had 22 girls showing up on Friday nights during COVID. We are planning to continue meeting this fall for a new Bible study. Right now, we are praying that God will lead us in a direction that we can listen and follow that plan that He already has for us. Our dream is to be used by God with what we have for whatever amount of time He calls us to help these girls grow in their faith through an organic relationship with God. Will you join us in praying that God's dream and visions for these girls and their families comes true?
Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess our fostering journey starts before we're married, before him. And how it started for me was I knew some women who were unmarried but had found out they were pregnant. So that's kind of a scary time. And so I just invited them to come stay with me to kind of refocus them away from the streets and drugs and stuff. And then we would talk about Jesus and where he was and where they were at with him. One mom really needed help with her baby. I think she was 4 months old, and she was homeless, living in like a drug house, and her goal was like to get a job. And so she asked if I would take the baby. So that kind of got the ball rolling for me to be like, okay, I should probably make this official and go through DSS and not just like have someone's kid randomly. And so I guess in 2018, I went through all the classes for fostering as a single woman. Then I met John Marc.
Well, I grew up in a missionary home. My parents were Bible smugglers into Eastern Europe. And so when I came to the States, I watched my brother foster and adopt 5 children. And I always felt that would be part of my life. And then a couple years down the road, I found myself a single dad with 2 kids in a house with an extra bedroom. And I kept thinking, I could foster. But there's a lot of stigma about men not being able to raise kids on their own. And so I wasn't sure how it would look for a single guy to go through the fostering process and get approved. So I had met Ashley, but we hadn't really talked much. And I'd heard from Crystal George that she had just been approved to be a foster parent, was still waiting for her first placement. So I reached out to her and just to find out what the process was like for a single person. And then we started dating through the communications. And I came alongside her and helped out as much as I could while we were dating. We moved right from dating into a 6-person household as soon as we were married. So it was nice because we both knew what we were getting into before we started. It wasn't something that just she wanted to do, but I was also interested in it as well.
A lot of people will ask, like, why did you get involved in fostering and stuff? And I think the answer to that for a lot of people is like, oh, the kids are great. And the kids are great sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. But I think for me, honestly, when I first started, it was taking in the moms. It was just an easy yes to like, yeah, I have, 2 extra bedrooms. I have a bed. Come sleep in my home. I think that was easy.
And when we have some parents, they've already had children in the system, and we've had them, and then they've actually requested that we take the other children when they find out they're pregnant. And so that shows a lot of trust that they have in us. And we hope that by continuing to have them attached to their kids and have a support system outside of just what the social services offered, might be a lifeline for them. It might be a way for them to turn their lives around and stop this cycle of abuse and neglect and sin.
Yeah. My first placement with the 3 kiddos, I really, really loved this mom. She did not really, really love me at first. I remember walking into the first visitation, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna love her. And so I like walked in, and she was sitting there and arms crossed, like completely closed off to me. And I was like, hey, oh my gosh, your boys look just like you. I was like, they are beautiful. And I just like bent down to hug her, and I think she was like not expecting that. And she kind of hugged me back, but we would like start texting and talking about how she was doing, what she needed support with. And a lot of times it's super practical, like go to this appointment, get a job, find adequate housing. So those are things that I can help with. I can help mom find those things. And then eventually those boys got to go back home to their mom, which was awesome, and also really sad for me. But I saw her, I don't know, fairly recently, I guess. And she like ran over to me. She's like, Ashley, and just gave me the biggest hug. And she was like just thanking me for everything that I'd done. And she was like, I'm just so grateful, and all that. So just a really cool moment to know that like, that God worked through me. And she may think it was me, but it was absolutely Jesus.
For as long as I can remember, I worked hard to hide my faith and only talk about my love for Jesus inside the church walls. But a few years ago, God began to give me a dream and a vision for connecting with women to share the gospel. My name is Joyce Perry, and this is my story. I was born in the Philippines and came to the United States when I was 12 years old. I started middle school in LA. I was a pastor's kid. I remember trying so hard to meet friends. When kids asked me what my dad did for a living, I told them that he was a pastor. From there, I was severely picked on and bullied to a point where I hid my faith from people for self-protection and acceptance. That began my journey of hiding my faith, and I carried this throughout my adult life. A few years ago, Blue Ridge had a series on PRESS, which stands for P, prayer, R, relationship, E, evangelism, S, serving, and S, scripture. The letter E for evangelism hit me hard, and I was so convicted. The thought of evangelism scared me. I ignored it for a while and told myself that I was already doing my part to move people closer to God, and I don't have to be the one to help them cross the line to say yes to Jesus. My husband and I decided to attend Encounter, which is the study of the book of John. We were reading John chapter 12, where Jesus performed many miracles, including healing a blind man, raising Lazarus from the dead. And then we read verse 43, and it said, "For they loved human praise more than praise from God." It was like God's word just swallowed my face and my heart, and the world stopped for a few seconds. Tears just rolled down my cheeks. I heard God saying to me, "Joyce, why do you continue to be ashamed of me? Have I not shown you how much I love you over and over again? What about all those moments that I've rescued you?" That night, I put my stake in the ground and declared, I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back, which meant to follow Jesus with all of me, and not just in the church building, but everywhere I go. I began to pray that God would lead me to someone that would help me get a backbone, someone that would help me get over my fear of rejection, fear of being ridiculed. I pleaded with God to coach me and teach me how to be a master at invitation. I wanted to learn how to be confident in inviting people so that I can invite them to church and ultimately invite them to accept Jesus. God was planting a dream inside me to share the gospel. Then I met a Mary Kay director whose #1 spiritual gift is the gift of evangelism. I also discovered that Mary Kay's priorities were God first, family second, and career third. God began to show me a vision of how I could love women and share Jesus with them. I remember having a conversation with him saying, "Really, Mary Kay, are you kidding me?" I was so scared to death because I didn't feel equipped to do this. Plus, I wasn't really a makeup girl. I was a computer science nerd, and I still am. In addition, I didn't like salespeople. If you invited me to a Tupperware party or Pampered Chef, I would come to your party and buy a lot to support you, but don't you dare ask me to host a party for you, because I dreaded the thought of inviting people and being rejected and being judged. Mary Kay was the last thing that I expected that I would be saying yes to as an act of obedience to God. I remembered crying every night. I was so scared to call people. I was so scared of the no's. I was so scared of being ghosted and avoided, but I remained on my knees in prayer. I fasted. To help me get over my fear, I started every meeting and facial appointment with prayer. Within 9 months, I became a sales director, and God impressed in my heart to name our Mary Kay team with scripture, Esther 4:14. As a brand new team, I modeled our priority of God first and started a monthly prayer huddle. Pretty soon, I was building relationships and praying with strangers that haven't been to church for a long time or ever. I was praying with broken moms, single moms, working moms who were depleted, and marriages that were struggling. In my studio, God was bringing me lost people to give facials and to share Jesus. I've had the opportunity to pray for Muslims and people from the LGBT community. And during this pandemic season, we've led several people to Jesus, invited people to church, took communion together, and more recently, had our very first baptism. As I wrap up, I want to read this verse, which is our team name, Esther 4:14. It says, "For if you remain silent, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows, but you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." For me, this means I no longer want to be silent. I don't want to miss being called on by God. God says we are royalty and we are called for such a time as this. So thank you to my Esther 4:14 ladies and to all who have supported us. This has been a journey beyond what I could have imagined or asked for. And I give all the praise and all the glory to Jesus. Thank you for allowing me to share this with you today.
Can we just give another applause for what Jesus is doing inside of people? We want to be a place that tells us stories of what he's doing. We want to be a place that celebrates the movement and obedience of people in spite of fear, feelings of inadequacy, time, schedule, restraints, and all of that. We want to be a place that celebrates things that are happening inside and outside of our buildings and our spaces through all sorts of different people in all sorts of different ways. But we want to be a place that doesn't just celebrate what other people are doing, but is inviting Jesus to invite us into the next step of whatever he may have for us, to birth dreams and visions. Notice as you listen today, like you listen to these stories, and none of them were paid professionals. They're not pastors that get paid to talk about Jesus. None of them were the missionary, the classic missionary you would think of, or all of that. None of them were even people that were necessarily launching new ministries throughout the week here at Blue Ridge at one of our physical locations. These were simply men and women who were willing to take the time to say, Jesus, would you speak? And when he would speak, taking that next step, that next scary step, that next simple step, that next large step that he was inviting them to take. And our hearts get to encourage, and people's eternities are being transformed and changed. People are seeing the gospel lived out both here and outside of these walls, and at Virginia Beach where baptism is taking place, and in Forest, and in Roanoke, and in Bedford, and in Appomattox, and in Mary Kay. And in a neighborhood. Because people are willing to say, Jesus, I don't know what this looks like exactly, but I'm open. Why did God have you here? Guys, the biggest thing is that I'm doing a poor job at communicating time and time again, is that we're not trying to fit into a mold and a specific model. We'll see what God does. See, the message doesn't change, but models, they adjust. The function of the church and what it's meant to do since it came into the world 2,000 years ago, that stuff is steady. The message that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light. No one comes to the Father except through him. We're not talking about changing that. But the forms, the way the church needs to look, the function it needs to, or the way, the form it needs to take out in our communities, the model it needs to become, it is going to look different than any of the church experiences we have had. And doing that, just like this last year has taught us, nobody's led. I've never led through this. I don't know what this looks like, and that may be unnerving, but that is also the other side of us going, God, this is gonna mean we get to keep in step with your spirit. And at the end of the day, we're not gonna go, man, Woody had a great vision. Man, Jeremy did a great job at leading us through this. I'm so glad he gave us so much clarity. That was supposed to be a joke. Because at the end of the day, we'll all sit back and we'll go, we could have never dreamt or thought or planned or understood what it was fully at where we started, where God was inviting us to go. But mornings like this are supposed to point to the fact of what Jesus wants to begin to do. When Israel crossed in from the Jordan River, when they crossed the Jordan River and they went into the promised land, the first thing God had them do was once they stepped onto the other side, he said, I want you, he divided the Jordan River and they went across and said, I want you to stop and I want you to get 12 stones and I want you to put them in a big pile. And here's the reason why. I want you to tell the story of my faithfulness over and over again, and I know you're gonna forget. And so every time your kids walk past this big pile of stones, they're gonna ask the question, why are these stones here? And what I want you to do is I want you to point back towards the story of me taking you through that land between. And what I did in you so that they will have the courage and the faith to follow me into the future I have for them. We wanna tell the stories of God's faithfulness so that we can celebrate, but so that we can have the courage to take whatever faith step is next for us as individuals. And to be able to sit back and go, God, look at what you're doing. So what is it for you? Why did God have you here? What was it? Maybe like Talita and Sarah, it's just about some kids in your neighborhood. That God's been stirring something. Maybe it came out of, maybe you saw something lacking in the body of Christ during COVID and it's just been this discontent inside of you. Maybe that's it. Maybe God did that in you because he wants you to take a step towards what was missing. Maybe it was to hear that the schedule's never gonna change. It's gotta just be that step in spite of the schedule. Maybe it's like the littles that God was preparing them, and whether it was a model of someone who'd walked this before them, introducing them to people. Maybe if you've heard Ashley's story, you know that she was a part of the system as a child. Maybe it's your past. Maybe it's God has people around you that help preparing you. That's why he's brought those people to you, and that's what you needed to hear today. Maybe like Joyce, it comes from the most obscure place. Mary Kay. What? Communion while we're doing what? Baptizing women who were what? It doesn't make sense. Maybe it has to do with your work. Maybe it has to do with stepping out of a place you thought you would retire, but he's calling you into a new place just like he called her. Guys, we don't have to have the whole plan. In fact, God is most likely not gonna give us everything. That's okay, because that's where faith steps in and says, Jesus, I'm just gonna take this step in front of me. So as we finish up, and you hear the stories, more stories you're gonna hear in this video of people who are renewing things and taking these small steps to see where God may lead them. Would you ask God, what is it you want to birth in me? What is it you want to do in me? What is it you want to renew in me this morning? Jesus, would you speak to us?
As we've been talking about dreams and visions over the last couple months, I've been wrestling with, am I just supposed to go find something new to do? Or like, can these old dreams and visions, things that I've been passionate about for a long time, do I just need to pour back into those things? I love coming alongside other couples and helping them understand what God says about marriage. And hopefully come this fall, maybe we'll have opportunities to meet together as a group and meet couples that I would not get to know otherwise.
I'm excited that God has me on the journey of, just already being in a ministry that was serving people that needed discipleship. We started this Friday morning thing. Just come out Friday morning, 9 to 11. Let's get to know each other. I get to be a doer of the word. I get to be with people who want to learn how to be a doer of the word. And, God's called me on it, and I'm excited for the next yes.
God, in January of 2020, gave me the idea to start a travel business. God gave me the idea in service to seek out those that are financially unable to visit family and friends. And I think that he wants me to use my travel business as a catalyst for that.
So I think the thing I'm most excited about with the dreams and visions thing is the freedom to step away from having to be Sunday-centric and to be able to love others. And more specifically, I think with my family. I've got 3 kids and a wife. And so I hate to say this because my kids are sitting out in the audience. But I think I've identified that just the distortion that I was believing that I have to be involved in something big, like a program or something, and that my family doesn't count. That if I'm just discipling my kids, that's not good enough. The Spirit just began to reveal, Mark, you've got a family and they're a priority. So this is your dream and vision. So again, I don't have a clue what that looks like. I just know that in my everyday life, I want to love others. I want to love my kids, my wife specifically, and just be an example of what Jesus is. And hopefully that comes to fruition.
So the dream and vision I've had, I believe God has shown me how he can use me outside the 4 walls of this church. It always kind of bothered me a little bit that I'm leaving my community and coming over here, and I've grown so much here at Blue Ridge. But I'm like, what can I do in my geographical area? I've been praying for a long time about being able to impact my community, which is about 20 minutes away in Alta Vista, and he's opened up some opportunities. He's opened up an opportunity to mentor and disciple at a veteran center that's opening up down there. And They're going to be helping out with veterans with PTSD and substance abuse issues. And, I feel like that's how God showed me that I can show them Jesus,
I think God is teaching me that I can use my platform. There's a lot of opportunities for me to be vulnerable and open with people, and then I'm able to connect with them in that way. I don't necessarily have a dream and vision, but God has been teaching me in all of this that vulnerability is like the key to making relationships, and relationships are the key to making disciples to make other disciples. And so I've just been learning how being open with your community and being vulnerable and being honest about where you're at is just like really healing.
I'm really excited that God has called me to enter into the workplace as a mission field. We've formed a little work as worship team at work, and there's 3 of us that we get together every Monday morning before work starts, and the goal being that hopefully we're reaching people who aren't otherwise churched, so to speak, and just being available to talk and go through life with those folks. It's been a blessing for the team, and we're really excited to see where this goes.
These are the days that we prayed for. A stirring of faith has begun. And I've seen so much, still I'm certain that the best is not yet come. 'Cause Jesus, you're not done with me. You're doing a new thing. You're doing a new thing. And I see a wave of revival preceded by justice and praise. The young and the old run to Jesus. Oh, and all the sin that held us back are laid to waste. With us, 'cause Jesus, you're not done with me. You're doing a new thing. You're doing a new thing. For all I've seen, I still believe. You're doing a new thing. You're doing a new thing. You're doing a new thing in us. Oh, your love is never gonna give up. You never give up. You never give up on me. Your love is never gonna give up. You never give up. You never give up on me. Your love is never gonna give up. You never give up. You never give up on me.
let's not overcomplicate it. What's your next yes? What's your next yes? God is speaking. He's talking. He's inviting. What is my next yes? What is your next yes? And what might God do with that yes? Jesus, would we leave here encouraged? Would we leave here emboldened by the power of your Spirit? Would we leave here celebrating and telling the story of your goodness? Would we leave here being obedient to the next yes you have for us? And through those yeses, those many, M-I-N-I, many, M-A-N-Y, yeses, would you build us into the church that you desire us to become, to reach the people, to disciple the people,